The beginning, a love that felt eternal. Ellen had always believed in love, but not in the way fairy tales promised it. For her, love wasn't a castle in the clouds, or a knight in shining armor. It was something quieter, deeper, something that touched the soul rather than just the eyes. And yet, when she met Raphael, it felt as though the universe had whispered, "This is the one you were waiting for." It was a late summer evening when their paths first crossed. The air was heavy with the scent of jasmine, the streets buzzing with the laughter of young people spilling out of cafes. Elin had stopped to fix the strap of her sandal when Raphael, rushing past with his usual impatient energy, nearly collided with her. She looked up, startled, and their eyes met. For a second, everything else blurred. The noise of the city, the chatter around them, even the cars honking in the distance. It was just her, with her wide, trusting eyes, and him, with a crooked smile that seemed both mischievous and tender at once. "Sorry," he said, his voice low, rough around the edges, yet unexpectedly warm. "No harm done," Elin replied, her lips curving into a soft smile. It was such a simple moment, and yet something sparked invisible, undeniable, like two flints striking in the dark. Neither of them knew it then, but that fleeting encounter would become the beginning of their story. Raphael wasn't perfect, not by any stretch. He was impulsive, ambitious, a dreamer with fire in his veins. He worked hard, too hard sometimes, chasing goals that seemed always just out of reach. But what set him apart was the way he looked at Elin, as if she were the only thing in the world that could steady his restless spirit. For Elin, Raphael became her safe place and her wild adventure all at once. He was the man who made her laugh, until tears rolled down her cheeks, and also the man whose late-night whispers under the stars made her believe in forever. She knew he had flaws. She knew he was sometimes careless with promises, sometimes distracted by his ambitions. But his love was genuine, raw, and it made her feel seen in ways no one else ever had. Their first weeks together were filled with endless conversations and long walks that seemed too short. Even when they lasted for hours, Raphael would hold her hand tightly, as though letting go might mean losing her forever. Elin, in turn, gave him a kind of devotion that came from the deepest part of her soul. She loved with closed eyes, unafraid, surrendering completely to the rhythm of their bond. One evening, they found themselves sitting on a quiet hill overlooking the city. The lights below flickered like stars that had fallen to earth. Raphael leaned back on the grass, his hands behind his head, watching the sky. "Do you ever think," he asked softly, "that we met because fate wanted us to?" Elin turned to him, her dark hair falling gently over her shoulder. "I don't just think it," she whispered. "I feel it." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering against her skin. "I don't know what the future holds, Elin. I want so much. Success, recognition, maybe even the world itself. But if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's you." Her heart swelled. "Then promise me something," she said, her voice trembling with vulnerability. "Promise me that no matter what you chase, no matter how far you run, you won't forget us. You won't forget this." He pulled her into his arms, his lips brushing against her forehead. "I promise," he said. And in that moment, she believed him. With every piece of her heart, she believed him. For Elin, Raphael wasn't just a lover. He was her anchor in a world that often felt uncertain. And for Raphael, Elin was the reason he pushed himself harder each day. His muse, his compass, his reminder that even in ambition, love was the truest victory. It felt eternal, indestructible. A love story too strong to be shaken by the ordinary storms of life. Or so they thought. The magic of their love carried Elin and Raphael through the early months. But love, no matter how passionate, is not immune to the weight of reality. Slowly, like hairline cracks in glass, small disagreements began to show. It started innocently enough, Raphael working late into the night, leaving Elin waiting at cafes with half-empty cups of coffee and her book untouched on the table. He always arrived breathless, apologetic, and with that same crooked smile that had once made her forgive everything. And for a while, she did. But love, when stretched too thin, begins to fray. One autumn evening, Elin sat by the window of a cafe they used to call their place. Outside, rain streaked the glass in long silver lines, and the world seemed to move faster than her own heartbeat. She stirred her tea absently, glancing at the door every few minutes. Raphael was late. Again, when he finally walked in, damp from the rain, he carried with him the scent of cigarette smoke and exhaustion. His eyes were tired, his shirt wrinkled, his phone buzzing endlessly in his pocket. "You're late," Elin said quietly, her voice trembling more from hurt than anger. Raphael dropped into the chair across from her, running a hand through his hair. I know. Work's been insane. I'm doing this for us, Elin, for the future. We talked about." She looked at him, searching his face for the man who once promised her forever under a sky full of stars. "I don't need the world, Raphael. I just need you, here, with me." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Raphael reached for her hand, but she pulled it back gently, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Do you even see me anymore?" she whispered, his jaw tightened. frustration flashing across his features. Of course I do. But love isn't enough, Elin. Dreams need sacrifice. You knew that when you chose me. Her heart cracked at the words, chose me. As if love was a burden she had willingly picked up, and now had to carry alone. The argument didn't explode, it simmered. Words were left unsaid, but the silence between them grew sharper, cutting deeper than any fight could. That night, as they walked home under the same umbrella, their hands did not touch. The closeness they once shared felt like a memory, slipping further out of reach. And yet, when they reached her door, Raphael cupped her face in his hands, his eyes burning with desperation. Don't give up on me, he murmured. Please, I need time, I need you to trust me. Elin's heart wanted to believe him, to close her eyes the way she always did and let love blind her, but something inside whispered that promises can break, even when whispered against your skin. She nodded anyway. Because love makes fools of us all. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, a seed that would grow, quietly and mercilessly, until it changed everything. Distance and silence time has a cruel way of stretching when love begins to falter. What once felt like fleeting days of passion turned into weeks, heavy with absence. Raphael's work consumed him. Deals, late-night meetings, endless phone calls, his life became a calendar of obligations. He told himself it was for them, for the life he wanted to give Elin, yet with each night he stayed away, each promise broken, he unknowingly built a wall between them. Elin tried to be patient. At first, she filled her evenings with books, with friends, with long walks through the quiet city streets, but no matter how much she tried, her thoughts always drifted back to him, to the way his laughter once filled their home, to the way his hands once lingered on her waist, grounding her in a world that often felt chaotic. Now, their apartment felt like a museum of what used to be half-drunk cups of coffee left cold. On the table, Raphael's jacket tossed carelessly over a chair, his scent lingering but his presence gone. The silence pressed down on her, not just the absence of his voice, but the absence of his attention, his presence, his care. One night, Elin sat curled on the couch, her phone glowing in her hand. She scrolled through their old messages, sweet goodnights, silly inside jokes, plans they once made with stars in their eyes. Her thumb hovered over his contact, aching to press call, to hear his voice. But then she remembered the countless times he had said, I'll call you later, and later never came, so she set the phone down. Her chest tightening with an ache words couldn't contain. Tears spilled silently, soaking into the pillow. She held against her heart. Meanwhile, Raphael sat in his office long past midnight. Papers scattered around him, his phone buzzing with reminders he ignored. He told himself he was doing all of this for Elin, that she would understand once he succeeded, once he gave her everything she deserved. But deep inside, he knew. He felt the distance too. Her absence haunted him. The silence between them was louder than any applause he could earn at work. And yet, he didn't know how to stop. He didn't know how to turn back without admitting he had failed. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. When they did see each other, conversations became shorter. Dinners grew colder, filled with the clinking of cutlery and the heavy weight of unsaid words. Sometimes, Elin would look across the table and wonder if the man sitting before her was the same one who once whispered forever under the stars. She tried to reach him. She tried to tell him she felt invisible, lonely, forgotten. But Raphael's replies were always the same. Just a little longer. Just a little more time. I'm doing this for us. Yet the more he chased the future, the more he lost the present. And Elin, she began to realize that love should not feel like waiting in an empty room for someone who may never come home. The silence between them was no longer an accident. It had become their new language, and it was breaking them both in ways neither dared to admit out loud. The breaking point, the caf scene. The cafe was warm that evening, filled with the low hum of voices, the clinking of glasses, the soft jazz spilling from hidden speakers. Outside, rain painted the windows in silver streaks, the kind of rain that made strangers draw closer, finding comfort in each other's company. But Elin sat alone. She had chosen their favorite corner table, the one near the window, where they used to watch the city lights flicker like fireflies. She remembered the first time Raphael had brought her there, how he had teased her about always ordering the sweetest pastries, how they had laughed until the waiter joined in with a smile. That table was theirs. Now it was just hers. The clock ticked. 7 o'clock. He had promised. She sipped her coffee, its warmth long gone, bitterness clinging to her tongue. She glanced at the door every time it opened, hope rising and falling like the tide. 8 o'clock. Still no Raphael. Her chest tightened. She texted him once, a simple "Are you coming?" The message showed delivered, but no reply. 9 o'clock. The rain outside grew heavier, a storm gathering. Couples left, hand in hand, their laughter spilling into the wet night. The waiter passed her table with a sympathetic glance, refilling her cup though she hadn't asked. 10 o'clock. Her phone screen stayed dark. His number rang and rang, then clicked to voicemail. She imagined him in another meeting, in another world where she didn't exist. The realization cut sharper than anger ever could. By the time Raphael finally rushed through the cafe doors, close to 11, he was breathless, his hair damp from the rain, his tie loosened. His eyes scanned the room until they found her. Relief flashed across his face, followed quickly by guilt. "Elin," he said, his voice low, desperate. "I'm so sorry. The meeting went late." And then she didn't let him finish. She didn't shout, she didn't cry. She only looked at him with eyes that held both love and exhaustion, the weight of every broken promise pressing down on her chest. "Raphael," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady enough to slice through him. "I love you. I've always loved you. But love isn't supposed to feel this lonely." Her words fell into the silence between them like stones into deep water, rippling through every memory they had shared. Raphael's lips parted, searching for excuses, for words that could undo the damage. But none came. He saw it in her eyes. She wasn't angry anymore. She was done. Elin stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor. She placed some cash on the table for her untouched drink. For a moment, her hand lingered on the edge of the table, as if anchoring herself one last time to the love they had once built here. Then she turned and walked toward the door. "Please, Elin," Raphael called after her, his voice breaking. "Don't go, not like this." She paused for the briefest second, her back to him, rain still falling beyond the glass. And then, without looking back, she stepped outside, letting the storm swallow her whole. For Raphael, the cafe became a graveyard. The chair across from him sat empty, mocking him with its silence. The rain outside blurred the city lights, but even through the storm, one truth rang clearer than ever. In chasing everything, he had lost the only thing that truly mattered. And Elin, she walked away with her heart bleeding, but with the quiet strength of someone who finally understood her worth. It was the breaking point. The night their love shattered. The night silence the turning point. Raphael's awakening and his rain-soaked return. Days after the cafe were not days at all for Raphael. They were hollow hours strung together, filled with the echo of her words. Love isn't supposed to feel this lonely. That whisper haunted him like a ghost. It followed him into meetings, slipped into the quiet between phone calls, throbbed in his chest at night when he stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The apartment once filled with her laughter, her scent, the delicate chaos of her presence now felt like a museum of absence. Her hair tie still lay on the nightstand. Her favorite scarf hung behind the door. A mug she had claimed as her own sat untouched in the cupboard. Everywhere he looked, there she was, and yet, she was nowhere. Raphael tried to bury himself in work, as he always had. Deals closed, contracts signed. The world applauded his success, but the applause sounded like static. His victories turned to ashes in his mouth. What use was ambition when the one face he longed to see wasn't there to smile at him? Nights grew unbearable. He would wake at 3 in the morning, reaching for her instinctively, only to find emptiness. The silence became a punishment, a deafening reminder of how far she had drifted from him, or rather, how far he had pushed her away. Weeks blurred into months. He called. She didn't answer. He sent flowers. They came back, untouched. His pride, once his armor, now felt like a prison. And slowly, painfully, Raphael realized the truth. He hadn't lost her because she stopped loving him. He lost her because he forgot to love her the way she needed. That realization broke him more than any failure in business ever could. One evening, exhausted from pretending he was fine, Raphael left the office earlier than usual. The sky was heavy with storm clouds, thunder growling in the distance. He didn't go home. His driver asked for directions, but Raphael waved him off, stepping out into the pouring rain with nothing but a heart heavy with regret and a desperate need to see her. By the time he reached Allen Street, he was drenched. His suit clung to him, his hair plastered to his forehead, but none of it mattered. All that mattered was the soft glow spilling from her apartment window, a beacon in the storm. For a long moment, he stood there, staring up at it, chest heaving, fear gnawing at him. What if she didn't open the door? What if she had already moved on? What if his presence only reopened wounds she had tried so hard to close? But love, real love, isn't cowardly. And so, with trembling hands, Raphael pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed through her apartment. Inside, Elin froze. She hadn't expected visitors. Certainly not him. Her heart raced, torn between slamming the door before even opening it, and the undeniable pull of the man she had once called her everything. She opened it slowly. There he was, Raphael, standing in the downpour, water dripping from his hair, his chest rising and falling as though he had run miles. His eyes, though tired and haunted, carried a softness she hadn't seen in months. He didn't come with flowers this time. He didn't bring excuses. He brought nothing but himself. Stripped of pride, stripped of armor, drenched and trembling, Elin, his voice cracked, rough, almost broken. I lost myself chasing a dream, and in the process, I lost you. I thought I could rebuild everything with success, but I can't rebuild my heart without you. Please, if forgiveness lives anywhere in you, let me try again. Not as the man I was, as the man you deserve. Rain pounded on the street behind him. His words hung in the space between them, fragile and desperate. Elin's throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to protect herself, to slam the door, to keep the walls she had built around her heart intact. But her eyes met his, and for the first time, she saw no arrogance there, no careless confidence, only humility, only love, only him. Tears welled in her eyes. "Raphael," she whispered, her voice shaking, "you broke me." "I know," he said, stepping closer, rainwater dripping from his lashes, "and I'll spend the rest of my life putting the pieces back together, if you let me." For a heartbeat, the storm outside mirrored the storm inside her, and then, slowly, she stepped aside, opening the door just wide enough for him to enter. It wasn't forgiveness yet, it wasn't trust, not fully, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings are enough. The return, forgiveness, rebuilding trust, and the proposal under the stars, letting Raphael back into her apartment that night, wasn't forgiveness, it was hesitation dressed as hope. Elin knew it. Raphael knew it too. He didn't touch her when he walked inside, didn't reach for her hand, didn't kiss her the way he once would have. He simply stood there, dripping rain onto her hardwood floor, watching her as though afraid she might vanish if he blinked. The silence was heavy. But it wasn't the silence of absence anymore. It was the silence of two hearts remembering the rhythm they had once shared. Elin finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "If you think words alone can fix this, you're wrong." Raphael nodded, his throat tight. "I know. That's why I didn't come with words. I came to stay." And so he did. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Love never is when it carries scars. Raphael had to prove himself in ways far deeper than bouquets and whispered apologies. He showed up every day. When Elin had long shifts at work, he waited outside to walk her home, no matter how late. When she felt distant, afraid of slipping back into the same loneliness, he listened instead of defending himself. When her doubts surfaced in the middle of the night, he held her, whispering, "I'm here, I'm not leaving again." Slowly, trust returned, not as a flood, but as drops of rain soaking into dry earth. Elin laughed again, really laughed, the way she used to. Raphael smiled again, not with the grin of pride, but with the peace of a man who had found what truly mattered. One evening, months after his rain-soaked return, Raphael suggested a drive. "No plans," he said, "just us." They ended up on the same hill where they once sat, watching the city lights flicker like fallen stars. Elin's heart ached with the memory of that night, of the promises made, of the promises broken, but this time, it felt different. Raphael turned to her, his expression steady, his eyes clear. He reached into his jacket, and for the first time in months, Elin's breath caught. He knelt on the damp grass, his voice trembling not from fear, but from the weight of truth. "I don't want to love you in fragments anymore," he said. "Not in stolen hours, not in broken promises. I want forever with you, only you. Elin, will you marry me?" The world seemed to pause. The hum of the city, the whisper of the wind. Even the stars above held their breath. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She thought of their beginning, their breaking, their storm. She thought of the man who once lost himself in ambition, and the man who now knelt before her, humbled by love. Her answer came in a whisper, but it carried the power of everything she had ever felt. "Yes." Raphael's breath hitched as he slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling. He stood, pulling her into his arms, and kissed her as though it were the first kiss and the last. All at once, their wedding was not extravagant. It wasn't filled with flashing lights or endless guests. It was intimate, wrapped in warmth, surrounded by family, close friends, and the soft glow of candles. But for them, it was perfect. As Elin walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on Raphael's. She didn't see the man who once broke her heart. She saw the man who had fought to rebuild it, piece by fragile piece. They said their vows with trembling voices but steady hearts, sealing not just their love, but their promise to choose each other, every day, even when life tested them. Again, that night, under the stars, Raphael whispered against her hair, "Forever starts now," and Elin, wrapped in his arms, finally believed it.